Yo guys, this is Josh or Milky from the Torchlight Maxroll team, and in today's video we're going to be talking about one of the strongest builds I've seen so far in the newest season of Torchlight Infinite. Frostbitten Gemma was a fairly underpowered hero for the past few seasons, and she received what would probably go down as one of the strongest reworks XD have ever done. She is now dominating the game. Lots and lots of strong builds on Frostbitten Gemma, and this is the version that I decided to put together. Now, full credit must go to Bun Assassin, a member of my chat, who put me onto this build, showed me some gameplay of himself, and after seeing it, I had to give it a try myself and add a few more twists to make it more appropriate for the Dreamcrafting season. It is an Icebound Beam build, and you'll see here those projectiles coming out from my character. They are extremely important. And the way that Icebound Beam works is that every time it reaches max channeled stacks, it will throw out a number of projectiles. This is equal to, you know, the number of projectiles you have from support gems, but also the number of beams you have. So increasing the number of beams increases the number of projectiles. And what you can actually do, if you make your minimum channeled stacks +4 by getting something on a staff, you can see we have +4 min channeled stacks, then every single wave of this spell will fire out those projectiles, and they can shotgun. So lots of projectiles and very fast firing, and they all shotgun. So you end up doing a ton of damage in one instance of a hit. The highest that I've seen one instance of damage do for myself is 460 billion. So you can imagine with how fast this is going, the damage is well off the chart. So very, very good. Now, the gear you're going to see is, of course, incredibly min-maxed, but there will be a more budget version in the builder in the description that you can take a look at if this is something you want to work towards, or maybe if you want to make this version, then pay attention to the items as I go through, but there will also be a builder for that in the description too. So we're going to start off with the way that I decided to scale the build, and that is mana stacking. It's a very, very powerful tool within the game, and one that doesn't really get enough credit. Mana stacking essentially allows you to build your mana pool, and then by using the major talent called Mind Focus, you can turn that large mana pool into added cold damage. So you can see 2% of the max mana is added to attacks and spells, and this is per focus blessing. So the goal here is to get as many focus blessings as we can, as much mana as we can, and that will take care of all our flat damage. But flat damage in itself is not enough. You need more than just flat. You're also going to want some sort of increased damage, and mana stacking once again gets some incredibly powerful options. You can see here this belt modifier that says for every 100 mana consumed recently, 8% spell damage, and this goes all the way up to 200%. Now, don't get fooled, you're not going to be doing 200% increased damage at all times. This obviously does take time to ramp, and spending that much mana can be very difficult. That mod on the belt and the helmet take care of all the increased damage that we're going to need within the build. Now, how are we going to spend that much mana? Well, first of all, we're going to need a lot of cast speed. So getting cast speed wherever you can, whether it's on your rings, your weapon, your gloves, cast speed is very, very strong. But also we can increase the cost of our skills by using this modifier on our rings, which increases the flat skill cost of the skill, increasing your damage as well due to the increased damage modifiers. So we have our flat out the way, we have our increased out the way, we have the cast speed and the skill cost that's going to give us even more increased. And then we want things like crit damage. So we're going to get Fervor, which is going to give us some base crit, some additional crit rating for every 60 mana sealed. This is a new Dreamcrafted affix that you can actually get. If we go on over to Patty over here, Dreamcrafting, you would select this, select a pair of gloves. I'll select a pair I'm not using. And then if you go into this one, it is right here. This item called the Tyrant's Iron Fist. So what you do is you would craft your item, and then you would attempt to remove a undesirable modifier. So you're going to put like a blank mod on the item and hopefully remove it. Now, if you fail to remove it with this elevated Dreamcrafting, don't be alarmed, because you can just come in here and do this until your heart's content. You can just keep spamming over and over again until you get the mod you want. Now, do bear in mind, it is going to be a weaker version of the mod. You can see this is +5% for every 50 to 80 mana sealed. On the lesser, it will always be +5 for every 80. So you're never going to get that really good roll of 50. I think mine have 60. So that's how we're going to get a ton of crit. Crit damage is going to come exclusively from the necklace pretty much. It's very difficult to fit crit damage into this build. This is something you're going to want to definitely get, which is critical strike damage per stack of any blessing owned, as well as critical strike damage rolls on things like your gloves, your rings. So crit damage, very important to get from your amulet. This mod right here actually gives me something like 120% critical strike damage, which when we look at how much crit damage I actually have without that mod active, it ends up being more than well, it'd be about a 40% damage increase from that mod alone. So incredibly powerful. And then finally, we've got things like gem levels. So gem levels obviously going to increase the damage effectiveness of our skill, and going all the way up to 30 is the most desired thing that you can do. So that's how we're dealing all our damage. Another great thing you can do, of course, is get refractions. Now, this is mainly for your clear, because the refractions are going to give you jumps on your skill. So jumps are going to cause those projectiles to chain off and hit other mobs, and it's going to make it feel much, much better to play. Now, importantly, we do want to be able to move, and there's a very cool thing you can do in this game for channeled skills. If you go into your settings and scroll down to battle, you can click this auto guide, and what this is going to do is it's going to turn your skill into a toggle. That green rotating ring around my skill at the bottom indicates that it is being channeled, and I'm not holding down my mouse, so I'm hands-free right now. This works for every channeled skill, whether it's Savage Charge, Path of Flame, or in this case, Icebound Beam. And this means we don't have that clunky beam playstyle. Now, the only thing we have to do next is be able to move. And the way that I decided to solve this in order to not interrupt my beams is to dash. But dashes have cooldowns. How do we solve that? Well, there's a new Dreamcrafted mod that can become on boots. And it says that when using a mobility skill, you can use 1 stack of Agility Blessing to reset the mobility skill's cooldown. Interval 0.25 seconds. So when it says interval, this is unable to be scaled. So you are hard capped at 4 dashes per second, which should be more than enough. I have, on occasion, dashed too fast and run out, but it should be more than enough. If you can't make a pair of boots with that modifier, a more budget alternative would be a pair of Blade Dancer Stepped. With this mod corroded, this is where the modifier comes from. If you want to do the profound Dreamcrafting onto your boots, you can see when using a mobility skill, same line, but it has an interval of 0.3, so you're capped at like 3.33 dashes per second. If you do profound Dreamcraft, you can get worse versions of the roll that consume more agility blessings than 1. This is a complete brick. You have to have it equal 1. It has to say use 1 stack of agility blessing to reset the cooldown. Otherwise, you cannot do it endlessly. You will have to wait for the cooldown to come back up. You won't be able to just dash around as much as you want. And that's not the only piece of the puzzle. In order for that to happen, you have to have a slate that says gain an agility blessing when using a mobility skill. So what's happening now is you're consuming an agility blessing in order to reset the cooldown, but every time you dash, you also gain one, creating this kind of perpetual loop in which you're going to permanently have agility blessings and permanently be able to dash. Looking next at the hero traits, we do go with a pretty standard setup for Frostbitten Gemma. We want freeze duration and cold pulse interval on your hero traits, as this is going to cause you to freeze the enemy more often and for longer. A lot of your damage is dealt exclusively when the enemy is frozen, so this cold pulse interval and freeze duration is very, very important. The second talent, we're just going to get more cold energy and restore 1 every second. We don't need Wintry Slumber, as the clear on this build is the least of your concerns, as you can use Precise Ice Imbue. Then we have Glacial Night. Again, you don't have a choice here, and it's very good regardless. And now in the 62 trait, you are going to want to use Frost Tides when you're clearing maps. It's going to reduce the interval of your Cold Pulse, which means it's then, when combined with the Blooming Frost Flower, going to proliferate all over the screen and just kill all the mobs. And they're going to explode and kill any mobs near them. So the mapping on this character is exceptional because of these 2 talents alone, Frost Tides and Blooming Frost Flower. If you don't have a Heart of Snow, which is a very expensive memory, you'll have to swap between these 2 when you're doing bossing, or you could just stick with Blooming Frost if you don't want to do bosses. It's absolutely fine. But the most DPS is going to come from the talent Frigid Infusion combined with Bone Piercing Frost, because then if you can keep the enemy permanently frozen, all the modifiers that you have to damage to enemies whilst they're frozen are active, so you deal a ton more damage. Arctic is a debuff that causes the enemy to take more damage from you, and it can stack up to 20 times, and it's 15% additional damage taken. So if you have the amount of freeze duration needed, you can get up to 300% additional damage taken on enemies. Yeah, you can see how this damage gets pretty crazy. But for mapping, as I say, Frost Tides and Blooming Frost Flower. Now for the memories, there are a lot of different options, but Cold Pulse inflicting more frostbite is very desirable, as well as max mana. We are a mana stacking build, so the more mana you can get, the better. And the second one is exactly the same. This is what I'd go for. For a more defensive setup, you could exchange the mana for physical damage taken as cold damage, or I like the DPS, but you can go for the physical damage taken as cold damage instead of the mana if you really like. For slates, there are some very important modifiers you absolutely have to get on slates. If you're looking at this and being a bit alarmed, you know, I've got the expensive stuff. You do not need this. I'm going to go through exactly what you need. You will need to own one additional stack of Focus Blessing. You will need one maximum Focus Blessing. You will need to restore 1% of your mana in order to be able to sustain the steep cost of these skills. So that's 3 that you absolutely need. You would really like this critical strike damage mod as well. As I said, we are quite crit starved on this build. And then finally, you're going to want this restore 2% of missing mana when using skills. And then 20% chance to gain Tenacity Blessing and Agility Blessing when receiving a Focus Blessing. So 5 very crucial mods to get across your slates. And also, of course, the one we spoke about earlier, which is to gain an Agility Blessing when using a Mobility Blessing. So 6 crucial mods, and the rest you can decide for yourself. Obviously, levels are going to be very good as they're going to substantially increase your damage, especially if you have a Prairie or a Moth. You're going to get a lot more damage out of your build. Right now, I'm roughly around 4 trillion if you do the annoying calculations. You hit the dummy and you wait to see when it drops below 500. So you don't need what I have to be capping out the dummy and being able to do all the content. This is extreme overkill, as you absolutely do not need all that. But the 6 core ones that I've just spoke about are absolutely necessary. For the pedigree, you can go with either Extreme Coldness or Mind Focus, the mod we spoke about earlier that transforms your Focus Blessings. The reason you can go with either is they're in the same tree. So if you get one, you simply go into Arcanist and select the other. So if you select Extreme Coldness, you would have to socket Mind Focus in your major talents. And if you get Mind Focus on a pedigree, vice versa. Then for our auras, which all of this stuff will be linked in the description. So if I'm glancing over some of the skills, do feel free to check out the builder. It's going to be a much better source than having to pause over and over again. You have the builder available to you. So we have precise projectiles, which gives us more projectiles and also more projectile damage. Elemental resistance, which gives us max res and shores up any resistance we can't get from gear. Additional cold damage taken from enemies due to frigid domain. Erosion enhancement makes us deal additional damage to the target's life. It's just another multiplier. Curse on hit, biting cold with abysmal hatred to lower the enemy resistance. And then energy fortress for a ton of max energy shield. You would want a precise one, but mine's on my other character. Auto defense with protection field and a thunder spirit is going to be a nice small defensive tool. And this is going to give you more cast speed so that you can spend more mana and then get more increased damage as a result. And a precise ice imbue is one of the craziest things they added this season. You now get a free explode on any cold based build, and with precise ice imbue, basically any build. So yeah, you absolutely want this. Make sure you get precise. Precise means you don't have to kill a frozen enemy. Instead, you have a 20% chance to explode any enemy, as well as the frozen one as well. So definitely recommend getting precise on that one. And then for the remainder of the skills, defensive buffer, reduces damage taken. Delayed pain, this is up very frequently, and it's going to cause a percentage of damage you take to be dealt over time. Grim Phantom is Speed Phantom, sorry, is how we're going to be dashing around. We're also using it to mark the enemy, which will cause them to take 40% additional critical strike damage. And then Secret Origin Unleash, which gives us a massive amount of cast speed, 25% additional, and then 3% for each Focus Blessing, which we have 19 of, which becomes 57% increased cast speed and 25% additional cast speed. So very, very strong on this build. And that all comes together to make a build that can walk up to the dummy and just send him off to the nether realm. This build does a disgusting amount of damage. I've killed every boss in the game, done the new invitation, and honestly, you do not need close to my gear to be able to cap the dummy. As I said, I'm doing it over 8 times. You can see this isn't moving, and it won't move for a while. Lastly, we'll talk about candles. You are going to want a candle that grants refractions. This is because it just increase your clear speed. As I said, it gives you more jumps. Sealed mana for aura skills is also an essential mod in order to reserve all the auras I have shown. But outside of that, you have a lot of options available to you. I choose to go with a 2% damage, skill area, and movement for every enemy defeated recently, just to go faster, have more AoE, destroy maps faster. But you could go with absolutely anything, cold skill level, more beams if that's what you want to go for, reduced damage taken, more aura effect. There's a lot of different things you can go for, and you can find a lot of power in your candles. So I hope this inspires you maybe to go and play a Frostbitten Gemma, an absolutely insane hero this patch. I don't imagine she'll be exactly the same next patch because she is disgustingly strong, and most people are playing her this season. So this is a build for you to go out and try. The kind of more budget version of the builder will be in the description, as well as this one that I've shown during the video. If you have any questions, you can come on over to my stream at twitch.tv/MilkyBK, and I'll be sure to help you in any way that I can. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.